everyone. Today we are going to discuss GS Mains Paper 2023. So before I start my discussion, what is my verdict about this question paper? This question paper was based on simply fundamental understanding, conceptual understanding, and how these things has been, these fundamentals of Indian constitutions has been implemented. Now, whenever the question paper is basic or based on a fundamental conceptual understanding, what should be the part of your answer? The first important is reference to the constitution become very important. Any question they are asking, if it is with the fundamental, then do give the reference where it is located in the class, in the constitution. If you are talking about urban bodies, so in which part of the constitution, in which article of the constitution it is mentioned. That is most important part. Now the second important part is, if you know about what was the basic purpose of placing that particular fundamental concept or any structure, then you should be writing about that. What was the basic purpose of placing Article 40 or urban bodies over there. Then third important thing, if any law is there, if any law has been designed further to consolidate or implement those basic fundamental or conceptual or provisions mentioned in our constitution. For example, Article 40 is talking about urban local bodies. So how come various laws has been made and finally 74th constitutional amendment was there. So this what technically called, we are locating the question or we are locating where it has been placed in our constitution by giving the reference of that particular question to the article, and even the other secondary laws, as I talk about the 74th constitutional amendment, are like in other question where they ask about NALSA. So NALSA is connected with the idea of free legal aid. Then using that context, this the authority was made by a law in 1987. So that is what we talk about, basic reference of the constitution plus reference of the law. Now the second important thing, if there any judgment which further broaden or deepen the understanding of that provision, you do mention about it. So reference of cases are very important. Now the third important part, if there are any committees on that, whether you can say constitutional committees or any constitutional body I am talking about, if it is not there, then if any state has established any committee or union government has established any committee, give the reference of those committees. These are very basic important things one need to mention in their answer. Now apart from that, if you can write about the government schemes, programs and policy while writing your answer, that is going to be the best. Again, I will give the reference like in case of NALSA, so free legal aid is legal aid clinic was there. So you can mention these schemes basically. So now we start our discussion with this question. The state in India seems reluctant to empower urban local bodies both functionally as well as financially. So in a very simple and easy way, I would say that the keywords are the states reluctant empower urban local bodies functionally and financially. Now the structure of this answer or this question is very simple. First, you should be able to locate it, what our constitution talk about local bodies, what our constitution talk about local bodies. So I would simply say reference of Article 40, 74th constitutional amendment and Article 243G. These are the three important references. These are the three important references to start your answer, or what you say, what you call it in your introduction part basically. Now the states, why the states has been mentioned, then the one line of the reference that the local bodies or local governance has been placed in the state list. So this is considered to be the primary responsibility of the state. Fine. Now the question is talking about states seems to be reluctant. Seems to be reluctant. Either you have to say yes, or you have to say no, or you can follow both. Yes, they are reluctant, but they made certain efforts too. So now when we focus on in what account we talk about reluctant, okay, before going that, you have one more option that you can mention the certain committees basically which talk about further devolution of the power, which talk about making state more empowered in terms of formation and implementation of the local bodies. You can give the reference of Ashok Mehta committee, you can give the reference of 15th Finance Commission report, you can give the reference of second ARC report on local governance, advocated more autonomy for the urban local bodies. So in first part of your answer, where you are locating the question and talking about references of the various committee which recommended that the urban body should be given more and more autonomy or more and more powers basically. But now we are talking about, and that is in the line of what our constitution want. Now that is not what we are witnessing. So now the question is that why we are not witnessing. Why we are not witnessing is, the first thing I would say that the centralization of power. The centralization of power. So states are quite, I would say, states are quite, I won't say disturbed, but definitely they have this fear that the power will be further given to the urban bodies. So that may impact in a longer term over the power what they had. So there is a tendency of centralization of power among the state, and this is the primary responsibility as per 44th constitutional amendment law to substantially devolve power to the state. So this idea of centralization of power this among the state is one of the major reason. The second reason is that the political interference. State political leaders are quite interfering in the urban local bodies, and one of the reason why they are interfering, because that is a part of unified political structure. Although we believe that election of the panchayat should not be on the party line, but it rarely happens. Even when we talk about the urban bodies, they are highly connected with the unified political structure of the party. So senior leaders, rather than making them more independent and autonomous, they keep on interfering so the political control can exist. Apart from that, this independent administrative cadre, these urban bodies are not having independent you can say administrative cadre to deal with that. Only the state administrative cadre is the senior officers in all these urban bodies. I guess everyone is aware of that. In the urban bodies, most of the people, most of the employees are the state government employees. So technically there is a strong control. They don't have dedicated administrative structure. Like Karnataka was the one state which provided dedicated cadre to the urban bodies as well as to the local bodies. So this is another major issue or challenge or reluctancy of the state. Then state government also talk about the functional complexity. So sometimes state governments argue that there is a lack of capability to the to these urban bodies basically to manage complex functions, and they have inadequate administrative and technical capacity basically to carry out such complex functions, and in this situation state need to be their director or controller basically. So it never allow these urban bodies to function properly, and then Administrative constraints I have already discussed. Now the other part was that financial. Now as per 74th constitutional amendment law, there are clear propositions, there are provisions that the state legislature must make or should make such laws which can empower these local bodies financially, and in order to do, they can allow these local bodies to impose certain taxes and other way of tax collection. And we already know the finance commission is also there, which is involved in devolving or sharing of the finances between union and between state and urban bodies. Technically, there is no representation of this urban body in state finance. So technically, I would say that state feel that providing more and more fund to the urban body will lead to the revenue loss for the states. They believe that state should basically have more work than the urban body, so their share is quite less. Then this finance commission, there is no representation, so whatever their requirement, whatever their demands are there, it has been rarely addressed. Budget constraints are there, CAG reports are there. In all these references, every time state has been, urban bodies has been denied their due financial rights. So I guess मैंने काफी points बता दिए, even 4 points, 5 points you are able to answer it, that's enough. But again guys, when the question paper is fundamental, structuring of the answer become more important, because everybody is going to write the basic conceptual part, everyone is going to give the references of the provisions. So how you structure it, it become very important. After discussing question number 1, let's discuss question number 2. In this question, discuss the role of presiding officer of the state legislature, maintaining order and impartiality, in conducting legislative work, in facilitating best democratic practices. This is a very simple and fundamental question. One should be knowing that first, role and location of this presiding officers. This location of presiding officer, like presiding officer of the state legislative, holds the central position in ensuring the smooth functioning of the state legislature. In our constitution, in article 178, there is reference of speaker and deputy speaker. Every state legislature must have a speaker and deputy speaker. In a similar way, article 183, there must be a chairman and vice chairman. So in very first paragraph, by providing this basic information, you provide this कि their role is a central in maintaining functioning of the legislature. Now they are asking about 2 specific functions like order and impartiality. So when it comes to the order, so how they play a role in ensuring order. So this ensuring the order is in terms of completely regulating each day functioning of the house, and here they have a complete right to give the sequence who is going to speak, when they are going to speak basically, and only it is the speaker that allow members to speak. So members can raise their hand, ultimately dependent over the speaker whom speaker allow. Now I am adding on something here. If what happen if members are not following or adhering to the rule, or they are disturbing the decorum and discipline of the house. So here our constitution provide immense power to the speaker. Now what are those powers? Just give a minor references. In order to maintain discipline and decorum, a speaker can punish individual member of parliament, group of members are holding the power to adjourn the house for few hours or few days depending on the situation of the house. In fact, in terms of Senate, it holds the power to adjourn the house for unlimited period or without mentioning any time frame. So, in case of maintaining this decorum, स्पीकर हैज अ पावर ऑफ पनिशमेंट एंड पावर ऑफ एडजमेंट. एक आध एग्जाम्पल भी दे सकते हैं, लाइक रिसेंटली संजय सिंह MP ऑफ आम आदमी पार्टी हैज बीन punished by the speaker, and if you want to go little bit detail, this could be in form of suspension, even it goes up to the dismissal of a membership. Now this is how they maintain the order. Now when it come to the impartiality, here you can talk about our constitution provide a range of clauses to ensure the impartiality of the speaker. For example, conduct of the speaker cannot be challenged in any court. The decision of the speaker is considered to be final regarding the interpretation of the constitution inside the house as well as interpretation of the rules regulation of the parliament. You all are aware of that. He was the one who is a approver of a bill, whether it is a money bill or not, and it cannot be challenged in any court. So in terms of impartiality, just the reference point, there are various clauses which ensure that the speaker should remain impartial. Apart from this, like his salary and allowances are charged on a consolidated fund of India, removal is with the effective majority. So there is a constitutional umbrella basically to protect the role of a speaker to maintain impartiality. Rather than giving in detail, just a small 2-3 line ki constitution want a speaker to be impartial. Now how speaker play that role of the impartiality? By providing opportunity everyone to speak, in the house, by accepting notices of the various motions, by accepting notices of asking questions. So what you can say that this impartiality is maintained by providing opportunity to all members belonging to the various political party to speak and discuss various issues inside the parliament. Now the third part is that how all these things is consolidating our democratic practices. So you can simply talk about, like in question hour, speaker allow members to ask question to the ministers. In a similar way, speaker take the notice and finally approve it to present certain motions like adjournment motion, present motions like censure motion. Censure motion is like criticizing government for their functioning. And even if member want to come up with a no confidence motion, speaker allow the no confidence motion. So in very simple way, question hour and the various motions was approved and allowed by speaker to the members to discuss it in the house, and that is all to ensure the democratic practices. So if I'll conclude this point, basically speaker is centrally located in, you can say, power and functioning of the legislature. His primary role is to maintain discipline and decorum, and in order to do so, he has a power to punish, including suspension and adjournment, and by facilitating debate and discussion through various motions and question hour sessions, if it is required, even asking for detailed discussion, extending the, you can say, discussion time. This is all how a speaker help in consolidating democratic framework. Now in this entire answer, lot of objectivity is required, where you are specifically mentioning the various role. अगर हम इसको थोड़ा और टेक्निकल तरीके से कहते तो वी कुड हैव बीन सेड दैट इन सेटिंग एजेंडा, फाइनल इंटरप्रिटेशन ऑफ द रूल्स एंड रेगुलेशन, allowing members to speak, decide their sequences, taking up the notice for the discussions. So here this is all, ensuring this, consolidate this democratic framework. Now we'll go for the next question. Question number 3. Discuss the role of Competition Commission in India, abuse of dominant position, multinational companies in India, refer to the recent decisions. Again, I would say that this is a very simple, easy and factual question. First, you need to talk about, but again I am saying, rather than writing a very general answer, it is very important that one should be able to write a very specific answer by providing the detail. For example, like the Competition Commission of India is a statutory body set up under the Competition Commission Act 2002. So starting from here, it is a body designed to regulate competition among the various players to ensure a fair competition and making market more competitive, and at the same time defending the interest of the consumer. तीन चीजें, competition should be very fair or fair among the players and making market more competitive. Making market more competitive, it means that more players can enter fairly into the market and interest of the consumers has to be protected. And under the domain of the Competition Commission of India, all the MNCs and other business groups which they are operating only in one country, they all come under the domain of Competition Commission. Now, what are the important role play? That was the second part of your answer, and I would say after the introduction, and here you should be very specific, very factual and very pointed. Like, one of the primary role of the Competition Commission of India is investigation, Now, investigation, they receive or they take basically complaints for unfair competition or even suo motu. Why I am saying this two things has to be there. Investigation on the basis of the complaint or they take the suo motu. अब इसमें example दे दो, like Google case 2021. Like Google was, in order to enter into smart television market, it was creating trouble to the basically free access to the modified Android OS basically. So here case was taken up and it instructed Google not to block the market or allow the market for the few players. Then regulatory oversight. Regulatory oversight, it means that if MNCs are creating high barrier at the entry point because they do not want more players to come inside, so they create a high barrier basically, or specifically for the small players as for small competitors. So there could be only competition among the big companies. Here also Competition Commission ensure that there could be easy entry of the small players even where the big giants are working. WhatsApp case 2021 is specifically related to its private policy which was more exploitative in nature. In a simple way, if Competition Commission find any kind of irregularities in it, they can impose penalties also for unfair competition. And Hyundai case 2017, in which Hyundai was fined by 87 crores, and apart from that, its another important role is a dispute resolution. In this case, you can, in this context, you can mention DLF Private Limited case. another important role is maintaining transparency and accountability. So technically this question was very simple, कि abuse of dominant position. So this question is basically talking कि how competition commission ensure that MNCs holding the dominant position should not go for unfair competitive practices, should not create a blockade for entry of the small players, should not exploit or adversely impact the interest of the consumer sections, and there should be transparency in their functioning, and in this context role of the competition commission. So as I said, investigative role, regulatory oversight, imposing penalties, then you can talk about dispute resolution, maintaining transparency and accountability, and for everything give a reference of case. That was simple and easy. Now the next question is question number 4, account for the legal and political factors responsible for reduce of frequency of using Article 356 by Union government since mid 90s. So how your answer going to start? First, what is Article 356? What is Article 356? Now to answer it, what is Article 356? Reference of Article 355 and 365. Again, try to maintain the objectivity. Article 355, which provide responsibility to the union government to ensure that every state has to run according to the constitution. Article 356 says that if there is a breakdown of the constitutional machinery, our states are not run as per the constitution, then 356 can be imposed. In a similar reference, if the state is not complying with the orders of the union government, then it is also making the case of Article 356. So this Article 355, Article 365 and Article 356 should be well coordinated to show that imposition of 356 is only in the case of breakdown of the constitutional machinery or non-compliance as per Indian Constitution. That is one part. Then the second part is that it reduces the frequency. So you should have certain data to tell us the frequency before mid 90s, the frequency was very high. I'll give specific data, like between 1950 to 1970, 20 times was there, but the maximum imposition of 356 was between 1971 to 1990, that is 63 times. 91 to 2010, I mean in this 17 year it was 27 times, and 2011 to 2016 5 times. Even if someone is not having that much of data, so at least 1971 to 1990. And why I am saying this? Because it is a marking line. 1990, there is a 63 times, and if you can take the data of 1990 to 2010, it is 27 times. So there is a drastic reduction, and this reduction will keep on increasing. Now come to this point, using by union government. So legal एंड पॉलिटिकल फैक्टर बहुत आसान है, जैसे ही लीगल फैक्टर बोला that is more related to the interpretation of Article 356. As Article 356 and 365 both are talking about imposition of 356 in case of constitutional breakdown and non-compliance. But what comes under the constitutional breakdown or non-compliance is neither defined in Article 356 nor defined in Article 365. And the report regarding constitutional breakdown and report regarding non-compliance is received either by the governor of the state or otherwise the president. I mean, by referring to any other source, president can do it. So, how the legal interpretation of what is constitutional breakdown, legal interpretation of non-compliance helped in reduction of imposition of 356. So, here 2-3 important cases are there: Bhuta Singh case, SR Bombay case and Rameshwar Prasad versus Union of India case. In these 3 cases, basically the interpretation of constitutional breakdown has been mentioned, in which they clearly identify in what conditions 356 can be imposed and in what condition 356 cannot be imposed. So, when we talk about the legal part, this reference of these three important cases was there. Now, apart from that, you can mention Sarkaria Commission recommendation. The reason being is that the government accepted the recommendation of the Sarkaria Commission. So, 3 important cases: Bhuta Singh, SR Bombay and Rameshwar Prasad against Union of India, in which, जैसे मैं कुछ एग्जाम्पल देता हूँ, in which Supreme Court make it very clear the reference of the material by the President to impose or to ensure that there is a breakdown or non-compliance is under the judicial review and must be based on the relevant material. Similarly, it has said that before imposition of 356, there should be an opportunity to explain why they are not able to maintain this constitutional order. Or it clearly says that even the 356 get imposed, there is a chance that government can be reinstalled. Apart from that, it is a very clear instruction whether the government is in majority or not, the decision will be taken through the floor test. No other measures are there. Now, these interpretation made it very clear. There is no space of personal interpretation of the breakdown of the constitutional machinery or non-compliance. And they also provided the list in what condition 356 cannot be imposed. One of the important references of you can say, if national elections happen and a duly majority party in the state failed to get the Lok Sabha seat, that is not the case of imposition of 356. To solving intra-party dispute, that is not the case of imposition of 356. These are very clear things. Now, let us come to the political reasons. What were the different political reasons, various political reasons which reduce the frequency of imposition of 356. One of the most important political reason is basically consolidation of regional parties. Now, this consolidation of regional parties, how it helped? Let us understand. This regional parties started coming to the power only by 1970s onwards, but they were most of the time coalition governments along with the national party like Congress. But by 90s, the mandate was clear. For many of the state, mandate had gone to the regional parties, and union parties, national parties failed to get much seats over there. in that context basically, this consolidation of regional parties. Guys, here when I'm saying national party, I'm not talking in technical terms how much percentage of the vote. The idea of the national party, it means that the party which is present in many of the states and an important participant of the union government. When I'm talking about a regional party, that it existence in a one state basically. It may be possible as per the rule a party, regional party may be a national party also, but here the reference point is that the regional party process which started by mid 1970s, it was get completed by 90s. They become a very strong contender in the state politics. This consolidation play a very important role. Then this rise of coalition government specifically after 1989. Now, coalition party after 1989, what was this difference? Even in 1977 coalition was formed, this coalition was different. Why? Because in this coalition, many regional parties were participants. Okay, it was small state parties hardly having 2-3 seats, 4 seats were the coalition partners. If you check out NDA or UPA, there are many partners are pure state parties, pure regional parties, hardly having much seat, but still they are coalition partners. So because of this coalition, it become very difficult for the union government to go against them and impose Article 356. And the most important factor why this frequency has changed, because at the union level also this UPA and NDA are the coalitions become institutionalized. Okay, let's understand. From 1989 to 2002, during all these periods, there are multiple government at the state level also. Multiple government at the union level, sorry. So technically, but after that, you can say coalition government was that, but they completed their entire tenure. Why it is happening? Because institutionalization of coalition party. Few of the scholars said that it is actually not a multi-party system, but it is a coalition party system. So there is a pre-poll alliances which provided stability to the government, and they are able to complete their 5-year tenure. Now the conclusion point is basically consolidation of regional parties, participation of regional parties in union coalitions, in union coalitions basically, and institutionalization of coalition politics in India. These are the 3 important political factors that played a very important role in reducing frequency of using Article 356. Fine guys. Next question. Discuss the contribution of civil society groups for women's effective and meaningful participation and representation in state legislature. Contribution of whom? Civil society groups. In what? Participation and representation. So how we are going to start it? You can simply start with that the total number of women overall in India is almost half, but their representation in the various institutions ranging from parliament to the state legislature is hardly 15%, and most of the time it is concentrated around 12 to 13% basically. And in panchayats where a specific reservation has been given, there is a tendency of, you can say, senior family members or husbands are the major decision makers. Now in this scenario, there is a range of the law which is promoting representation of women in parliament. Apart from the legal and institutional mechanism, there is an effort from the civil society groups. Effort from the civil society groups for women's effective and meaningful participation. Now, when we are starting our answer in introduction part, just give some data specific introduction where you can say that overall population is almost 50%, but their participation is concentrated somehow around 10 to 12%. In some cases it is 15%, and this gap of 35%, more than 35%, is because of the certain reasons. You can simply add on, okay, our constitution is committed for gender equality, and range of institutional mechanism and legal measures has been taken to ensure gender equality, but technically still it is far below. Now, in this situation, apart from the legal and institutional apparatus, there is a role of civil society groups. Just defining what are those civil society groups. Just defining what are those civil society groups is like non-governmental organization, then advocacy groups or policy advocacy groups, or even sometimes formal RWAs also, they all come under the civil society groups basically. Now, these civil society groups, how they play an important role. Here you need to identify at least 3-4 important functions what they are doing. In this context, you can talk about like awareness campaign. They launch awareness campaign. They work on the capacity building. This is the 4 important point: awareness campaign, capacity building, policy advocacy, and litigation. So they make women aware through their various campaigns about their political rights, about special positioning of women in Indian political system, and they encourage them to participate. When it comes to capacity building, by providing informations, making them activist, providing opportunity to lead and participate in the various programs, they function in the line of capacity building. Policy advocacy, it is more about they put the demands of reform in favor of the women, and litigation, if it is required, they go to the courts also basically. So these civil society policy groups in form of awareness, capacity building, policy advocacy and litigation, they contribute for women's effective and meaningful participation and representation in the state legislature. Now you can add on with the certain examples. Okay, some of the civil society groups that actually helped in that context. So you can take the big name, that is ADR, that the Association for Democratic Reforms. You can mention that ADR in its report said that the winnability of the women candidates is much more higher than the men, but still their number of candidates are very less. This ADR also filed many cases specifically to ensure the women representation. Then SEWA was another important organization, Self-Employed Women Association. Then there was 50 million missing campaign. You can talk about, this is specifically for the missing girls, but actually it is also awareness group and policy advocacy group basically. Technically, your answer should have 3 important parts. The first part is of the introduction, where you are giving the right context, why this role of civil society groups are required apart from the institutional and legal mechanism. In the second part, what role they play, you talk about, and connecting to it, you come up with the certain examples, and in conclusion, you can add on there are various reasons why this participation is less after making such efforts by the institutional and legal mechanism along with the civil society groups. You can identify 3-4 reasons specifically around the patriarchy. So this is what important. Again, I am repeating, the data related to women participation has to be part of your answer. For example, like overall percentage is around, maximum percentage is 14.4, it is in Chhattisgarh. Chhattisgarh and West Bengal has almost 13% and 14% women participation in their state legislature. Apart from that, in rest of the state it is concentrated around 10 to 11%. Even if you know 2-3 data of the state are overall general data, even if you know the data related to women's participation in parliament, you can put it over here. So this is how this question has to be discussed. Now let's see this question. Explain the significance of this 101 Constitutional Amendment Act. To what extent does it reflect the accommodative spirit of federalism? So you can start. What is federalism? And you can merge it with what type of federalism India is. You can simply talk about India by the virtue of division of power, by the virtue of written constitution, and few more features. India is also a federal state. India is also a federal state, but typically not a conventional federal state. Conventional federal state in which the role of the union government, power of the union is much more in comparison to the state units. इस दूसरे तरीके से भी लिख सकते हैं कि even giving the reference of any name also, like India is a federal state but not in conventional sense. It is because of that few scholars call India a quasi-federal state. So in Indian federal design, in distribution of power or in division of power, union is much more powerful in comparison to the state. In terms of division of the subject, in terms of exclusivity, in terms of making laws over that subject, union is much more powerful in comparison to the state. एक लाइन में ये भी बता सकते हैं कि there is separate subject to the state, but in certain conditions even union can make laws over that. So in just one paragraph you give a clear impression that India is a federal state but with peculiarities. That is not a conventional style federal state. And then our constitutional makers were interested to make India a cooperative federalism, or they wanted that there should be a scope of accommodation for union towards the state, where both jointly functions in such a way that help in policy formulation and implementation of each other. In this context, various mechanism is already mentioned in our constitution. For example, you can say interstate council. Then even later on, Parliament made many provisions to facilitate this accommodation style of functioning between union and state, means this cooperative federalism basically, like the creation of zonal council was there, then this Niti Ayog was there. In this line only 101 which is related to the GST can be understand well. अब यहाँ आगे लिखने के लिए 3 लाइन और डाल सकते हैं. If you look into the constitutional provisions, it seems to be union has much more financial power in comparison to the state, and it is because of that the few scholars criticize that there is a deliberate attempt to make a state dependent over the state union government in terms of financial domain. Apart from that, whatever the financial mechanism of distribution of finances was there, the role of state was negligible. Here you can give the reference of Article 280 Finance Commission, where no role of the state is there. No role of the state is there. In a similar way, when it comes to providing our finances to the state, I mean, apart from the division of the taxes, I am talking about providing grants in aid. Here also it is because of the recommendation of Finance Commission, there is no representation of the state. So in general, in existing financial distributive structure, our decision making structure, there is no role of the state. It is completely dominated by the union government. Now 101 can be seen as a change of the trend in this context. That is why it is considered to be a step forward in realization of what we call it fiscal federalism और फाइनेंशियल फेडरलिज्म. तो ये जो पूरा डिस्क्रिप्शन मैंने बताया, that has to cover not more than 6-7 lines. It is well framed, where you are talking about India is not a conventional federal state, and in financial domain there is no role of the state. It was completely regulated and controlled by the union government. Fine. And then you come up with this 101, that is GST, that is related to GST. And here you can go for certain specific clauses. If you can write it, that is going to be very specific. Like Article 279A established the GST Council chaired by the Union Finance Minister responsible for making recommendations on GST rate, laws, rules and regulations. GST has a dual model consisting of GST, state GST, union GST and IGSTs, and state has been given a proper space in GST Council, and their vote and their role matters. So in general, giving it little bit more detail of the functioning of the GST Council, highlighting the role of the state, कि how state in financial decisions emerge as a crucial player, where union government accommodated it, and at the same time how come in terms of division of the taxes, union government follow the model of equidistribution, where 9% goes to the state and 9% goes to the union government, and that is both are just a change in the earlier model, where the dominance of the union was there in decision making and bulk share go to the dominance of the union government and bulk share go to the union. Now this trend has been gradually changing, and in context of GST Council. Writing conclusion, come up with 2-3 lines where you can give the reference of 2 points, like there is a delay in releasing GST amount to the state, that is troubling to the state. And the second one, in interstate trade basically, it is union government that can impose taxes, or there is a complete control of union government over the GST on interstate trade. So there is not much change when it comes to the interstate trade, and even release of the GST was a major issue. So this could be handled like this. We are going to discuss this question now. Explain the structure of the parliamentary committee. Key term. How far have the financial committee, this is second part, helped in the institutionalization of Indian Parliament? Now, when we come to institutionalization of Indian Parliament, means functioning of the Indian Parliament related to the finances. Now, structure of the parliamentary committee, why this structure is very much important? In general, you can simply say Parliament discharge their functions through parliamentary committees. Technically, there are two types of parliamentary committees: standing committee and ad hoc committee. Even in standing committee, there are department related committee. In general, over 45 committees are there. Out of 45 committee, 24 committees are joint parliamentary committee and 21 are single house parliamentary committee. This all information can be placed in your introduction part, or you can start in another way by defining what is parliamentary committee. What is parliamentary committee? Just in 3-4 line, like parliamentary committee is constituted by parliamentarians, but that is not enough. By parliamentarians, they work under the supervision of the speaker and they present their reports inside the house. Now, these three important features are very much important to define a parliamentary committee. Then you can discuss as I talk about standing ad hoc. And so, this first paragraph is around deciding or defining parliamentary committee and talking about its structure. Member of parliament are part of its structure. Now, in its structure there is a peculiarity. What is that peculiarity? Like election. How election happened? This is very interesting. Few committees are elected through you can say by the house itself. There are few committees where a speaker nominates the members. If it is a joint committee, then consultation of Rajya Sabha is there. But when it comes to when they are elected by the house, that is very specific, and that is on the basis of proportional representation. On the basis of proportional representation. Now you understand, financial committees are one of those committees where members are become part of the financial committee through proportional representation. It means that you need to talk about in the structure there is a representation of various political parties as per their strength in the house. So that was the key term what they are looking for. Explain the structure of the parliamentary committee. In general, member of parliament are there. If I'll explain the structure, MPs are part of this. The first important point, in case of the few parliamentary committees, as I talk about financial parliamentary committees, basically members are elected on the basis of proportional representation by the house itself. Second important thing about this structure, specifically of the financial committees, that ministers cannot be strictly part of those financial parliamentary committees. And third important thing, these committees, including these financial committees, can decide their functioning by their own rule if the parliament approves and the speaker agree with this one. And head of these committees are appointed by speaker. So when they talk about this structure, they are actually willing to know how the structure of this parliamentary committee is fair. That is what the core line. And it is not only the ruling party parliamentarians are part of that. The second important thing, how ministers has been kept out of it. And the third important aspect is the role of the speaker, which hold the centrality. Now come for this part. How far have the financial committee helped in the institutionalization of Indian parliamentary committee? Simple. First talk about three important financial committees. Talk about estimate committee, talk about this PAC, public account committee, and business undertaking committee. Discuss what are their major functions of these committees, and in a general way you can talk about how these committees play an important role to hold check over the government financial expenditure. And you can give the certain examples with the time they exposed also, you can say, certain scams, like 2G scam is one of the example. Earlier also there was a Jeep scam, Moondala scam. There are a lot range of the scams which was highlighted by these committees. Although there is a limitation of these committees, they inquire about the money once the expenditure has been done, but still looking into the expenditure for the allotted items, ensuring that organizations are functioning efficiently, that is the core idea where these committees functions. One more thing I would like to write you guys over here, they do not question the policy. Specifically we talk about PAC, Public Account Committee. They are more into looking whether the money has been spent in the right item or not. That's all. They do not look into the, what you call it, they do not question actually the policy. So overall conclusion is that the structure of the parliamentary committee is designed in such a way which represent various political parties. It tried to maintain neutrality by keeping out minister out of it. Minister of, I specifically financial committee, and as a speaker is also considered to be political neutral, as a head of these committees or appoint someone else as a head of this committee. So in a structural term, there is the effort to make these parliamentary committees politically neutral and look into the issues only through the prism of the policy matters, whether it is functioning properly or not. And these three financial committees are core, and they played a very important role in keeping check or tab over the financial expenditure of the government. So this is how you can complete it. As I said earlier also, the question was very fundamental. So as much as you can put the factual information, you can write the constitutional provisions, and you understand the basics, why such provision and arrangements are there, how for these institutions are able to complete those provisions, the chances of marking is quite high. I would say that sometimes we make a very general statement. If the questions are fundamental, then general statement rarely work for this. So guys, these are the questions what we have discussed. So thank you from my side.